The rain fell over the city like a sorrow that had finally grown too heavy to carry. It streaked across the glass walls of the small cafe near the river, turning distant headlights into blurred ribbons of gold and white. Outside, people hurried beneath umbrellas, shoulders hunched against the cold wind. Inside, soft jazz drifted through the warm air, mingling with the scent of coffee and freshly baked bread. At a corner table sat a woman wearing a plain gray sweater and faded jeans. No one looked at her twice. No one knew that she owned one of the largest technology companies in the country. No one knew that her signature could move millions of dollars in a single afternoon. And no one knew that she was about to conduct the 47th test of her life. Her name was Victoria Hale. At 38 years old, she had everything most people spent their lives chasing. Success, power, influence, a penthouse overlooking the skyline, luxury cars, investments that grew while she slept. Yet every night she returned to a silent apartment that echoed with a loneliness money could never touch. Have you ever achieved something you once dreamed of, only to discover it wasn't enough? Victoria knew that feeling too well. She glanced at the old watch on her wrist. The watch wasn't expensive. Its leather strap was cracked. Its face was scratched. It had belonged to her father. Years ago, before she became successful, before the magazine covers and television interviews, before investors competed for her attention, her father had sat across from her at their tiny kitchen table. He had worked as a mechanic. His hands were always stained with oil. His back always hurt. His clothes always smelled faintly of gasoline. But he had been the richest man she had ever known. Not because of money, because of character. People show you who they are when they think you have nothing, he used to say. She never forgot those words. Especially after he died. Especially after success changed the way people looked at her. The first man she dated after becoming wealthy had spoken constantly about love. 3 months later, he asked her to invest in his failing business. The second proposed marriage after 6 months. Then she discovered he had accumulated enormous debts he expected her to pay. The third seemed perfect, until she overheard him discussing her net worth with his friends. After that, something inside her hardened. Not completely, just enough to protect itself. So she created a test. Every blind date would meet the same woman. Not Victoria Hale, CEO. Not Victoria Hale, millionaire. Just Victoria, an ordinary office worker struggling to make rent. The test was simple. The truth was never revealed immediately. She watched. She listened. She waited. 46 men had failed. Some failed quickly. Others took months. But all failed eventually. Tonight was number 47. The door opened. Cold air swept into the cafe. Victoria looked up. A tall man stepped inside. His dark jacket was worn at the elbows. Rain glistened on his shoulders. Beside him stood a little girl holding his hand. The child couldn't have been older than 8. Victoria blinked. This was unexpected. The man spotted her and smiled apologetically. Victoria, she nodded. Andrew. Yes. He looked embarrassed. I'm sorry about this. He glanced down at the girl. My babysitter canceled at the last minute. The child hid partially behind his leg. I didn't want to cancel. Victoria found herself smiling. It's okay. The girl peeked out. Large brown eyes. Curly dark hair. A shy expression. What's your name? Victoria asked. The child hesitated. Then whispered, Emma. Nice to meet you, Emma. The girl offered a tiny smile. Something warm moved through Victoria's chest. Something unexpected. They sat down. Andrew kept apologizing. Victoria kept reassuring him. When the menus arrived, Andrew studied the prices carefully. Very carefully. Victoria noticed immediately. She had seen that look before. The silent mathematics of someone balancing necessity against desire. Emma pointed toward a chocolate cake displayed behind the counter. Then quickly lowered her finger. It's okay, she said softly. Andrew looked at her. You want cake? She shook her head. No, Emma. The little girl stared at the table. If I get cake, you won't get lunch tomorrow. The words were quiet, simple, matter of fact, as if discussing the weather. Victoria felt her throat tighten. Children weren't supposed to think like that. Children weren't supposed to carry those calculations in their heads. Andrew reached across the table and squeezed his daughter's hand. His eyes briefly clouded with pain. Then he smiled. The lunch budget is safe. Emma smiled back. Victoria looked away. Suddenly the menu seemed difficult to read. They ordered inexpensive meals. Nothing fancy. Nothing impressive. The conversation began cautiously, like all first meetings. But something about Andrew felt different. He wasn't trying to sell an image. He wasn't performing. He wasn't turning every sentence into an advertisement for himself. Instead, he talked about Emma. About her school. About the science project they were building together. About the stray cat she wanted to adopt. Every time he spoke about his daughter, his face softened. The exhaustion disappeared. The worry disappeared. Only love remained, pure and visible. Victoria found herself watching him more than listening. Not because he was handsome. Though he was. Not because he was charming. Though he was. But because he seemed genuine. Do you know how rare genuine people become once money enters the picture? Victoria knew, painfully well. Halfway through dinner she asked quietly, what happened to Emma's mother? The question lingered between them. Andrew's expression changed. Not dramatically. Just enough. The kind of change grief leaves behind. Permanent. Subtle. I lost her 6 years ago. Victoria swallowed. I'm sorry. He nodded. For several seconds neither spoke. Rain tapped softly against the windows. Coffee machines hissed in the distance. Someone laughed near the counter. Life continued. It always did, even when hearts broke. Car accident, Andrew finally said. Emma was too. Victoria saw something in his eyes. Not self-pity, not bitterness, just absence. A place where someone should still exist. Have you ever lost someone whose absence became part of your identity? She understood. After her father died, she had spent years reaching for a phone that no longer rang. Years wanting to tell him about promotions. Failures, victories, years forgetting for one brief second that he was gone. Then remembering all over again. The conversation slowly returned, but something had changed. The walls between them had lowered slightly. When dinner ended, Andrew insisted on paying. Victoria knew it cost him more than he could comfortably afford. Yet he never hesitated. Outside, rain still fell. Emma stood beneath the cafe awning. She looked up at Victoria. Will I see you again? The question surprised everyone. Andrew looked mortified. Emma, what? You can't ask people that. The girl frowned. Why? Victoria laughed softly. The sound surprised her. She hadn't laughed like that in a long time. I'd like that, she said. Emma grinned. A real grin. Bright enough to challenge the weather. As Victoria watched them walk away, she felt something strange. Hope. Small. Fragile. Dangerous. The following Sunday they met at a park. Then again the next week. And again after that. Days became weeks. Weeks became months. Slowly, carefully, they entered one another's lives. Victoria continued her deception. She hated that part. But she couldn't stop. Not yet. The test mattered. At least she believed it did. Andrew worked maintenance at a community college. The pay wasn't great. The hours were long. Yet he never complained. Not really. Instead, he focused on Emma. Always Emma. One afternoon Victoria arrived at their apartment carrying groceries. The building was old, paint peeled from the stairwell walls. The elevator groaned like an exhausted animal. Inside the apartment everything was clean but worn. The couch had been repaired multiple times. The dining table carried scratches and water stains. The curtains had faded unevenly in the sunlight. But the place felt alive. Photographs covered the walls. Emma's drawings decorated the refrigerator. Books sat stacked in corners. Love lived there. Victoria could feel it. As she unpacked groceries, she noticed Andrew quietly removing several items. What are you doing? He looked uncomfortable. Taking these out. Why? They're expensive. Victoria stared at him. So, you shouldn't spend money on us. The words struck her unexpectedly hard. Most people accepted generosity without hesitation. Some even expected it. Andrew looked genuinely worried about her finances. The irony nearly made her laugh. Or cry. She wasn't sure which. Months passed. The bond deepened. Emma began calling her whenever something exciting happened. A good grade. A soccer goal. A lost tooth. Victoria found herself looking forward to those calls. Looking forward to all of it. For the first time in years, her apartment no longer felt quite so empty. One evening she attended a charity gala. Crystal chandeliers sparkled overhead. Champagne flowed freely. Investors mingled beneath enormous floral arrangements. Victoria wore a designer gown worth more than Andrew's monthly salary. The contrast made her uncomfortable. As executives praised quarterly profits, her thoughts drifted elsewhere. Toward a little apartment across town. Toward a father helping his daughter finish homework. Toward a life that somehow felt more real than this room full of wealth. After the gala, her chief financial officer approached. "When are you going public with the relationship?" Victoria froze. "What relationship?" He smiled knowingly. "The mystery man you've been seeing." News traveled fast, especially among powerful people. Victoria sighed. "Eventually. You care about him." It wasn't a question. She looked away. The city glittered beyond the ballroom windows. Thousands of lights. Thousands of stories. One heart beating harder than it should. Maybe. Her CFO studied her. "Be careful." The warning lingered. Victoria knew exactly what he meant. The truth couldn't stay hidden forever. Sooner or later, Andrew would learn who she really was. And then everything would change. Wouldn't it? That question haunted her, every day, every night, because the longer she knew him, the more terrifying the answer became. One cold November evening the answer began approaching. Victoria arrived at Andrew's apartment to find him sitting alone at the kitchen table. Bills covered the surface. Emma was asleep. The room was silent except for the ticking clock. Andrew looked exhausted, more exhausted than she had ever seen him. What happened? He rubbed his eyes. The landlord raised rent. Victoria sat beside him. How much? He told her. The number wasn't enormous. Not to her. But she saw the impact immediately. The calculations. The fear. The impossible balancing act. Without thinking, she reached for her purse. Andrew stopped her. "No. You haven't even heard what I'm offering." "I know." "Andrew. No." His voice remained gentle, firm, steady. "I'm not taking money from you." Victoria stared at him. "Why?" He looked directly into her eyes. "Because that's not why I'm with you." The room seemed to stop breathing. Those words, simple, honest, unrehearsed, they entered places inside her that years of success had never reached. For a moment she forgot every test, every fear, every reason for caution. She only saw the man in front of her. The man who had no idea she could solve all his financial problems with a single phone call. The man who refused help because his dignity mattered more than convenience. The man who loved his daughter fiercely. The man she was slowly, helplessly falling in love with. And for the first time since beginning her strange experiment years ago, Victoria wondered whether the test itself had become the problem. Whether protecting her heart had also imprisoned it. Whether fear had disguised itself as wisdom. Outside, snow began falling. Soft white flakes drifted through the darkness. Inside the apartment, neither moved. Neither spoke. Because sometimes the most important moments arrive quietly. Not with grand speeches. Not with dramatic music. Just two people sitting across from each other. A truth waiting to be discovered. And a secret growing heavier with every passing day.